Hi, welcome to the Madison CLD channel. Today we're going to talk about part 3 of our Newcomer series. I will put links in the cards above for parts 1 and 2. Part 1 is when we talked about what you can do for a newcomer before they even arrive in your classroom. And in part 2, we talked about the first days that your newcomer is in your classroom. Today's topic is 12 strategies that you can use to communicate with that newcomer who doesn't speak English. Strategy number 1 is to show objects. Anytime that you can, use real things. Realia is going to be your best friend. If you don't have the real objects, the next best thing would be pictures. After that, if you don't have any pictures, just draw the pictures. They won't care if they're just simple things like stick figures, won't matter. Or you can even act out the meaning of what you are saying. Strategy number 2 is to speak at a slow to normal pace and use short sentences that the student can understand. Don't use longer sentences. Strategy 3, choose your words very carefully. Use high-frequency words that the student will know, and also avoid using pronouns. If you're talking about another student, be sure to use that student's name. Pronouns can get very confusing for newcomers. Strategy 4, make sure that you are using the full forms of words and not using contractions. When you say can't, they might not hear that T on the end, and they might assume you said can. So always make sure you say cannot instead of can't, as well as other contractions. Tip number 5, pause after your sentences or phrases, but don't stop after every single word that you say. That way your student can have time to process what you're saying in smaller chunks to catch up with what you are getting across to them. Tip number 6 is to repeat cheerfully. Don't get mad at your student if they don't understand on the first try or even the second try. They're doing the very best that they can. Just give them time. Be patient with them. Tip number 7 is to, when they first arrive, make sure that you're speaking to them on one-on-one situations and don't call them out in front of the whole rest of the class. That can add some stress to them that will cause them to shut down. Tip number 8. Don't talk any louder than is necessary for the student to hear you. If they're not understanding your words, speaking louder is not going to make it any clearer. It's just going to make it sound angry to them. You don't want that. Tip number 9, avoid the passive voice and also avoid complex sentences when you're speaking to the student. Tip number 10, check for understanding frequently, but don't say, "Do you understand?" In some cultures, it's considered rude to not understand what somebody is saying or to admit that you don't understand. Instead, think of other ways to check for their understanding, such as, "Can you repeat back to me what I said?" Or ask them, "What did you hear me say?" That way, you are going to see if they understood you or not, but you're not going to cause them any panic. Tip number 11, teach them the phrases, "Slowly, please," and "Please repeat that." That will help them with any adult or any student that they are working with in a polite way to have them repeat it back to them. And our last tip, tip number 12, is to write what you're saying on the board. This will give the student a visual as well as an auditory representation of the meaning of what you're trying to get across. And also, when you're writing on the board for your whole class, don't talk while you're facing the board and writing. A lot of our newcomers and our second language learners use facial expressions for cues as to what you are saying. So if you have to write on the board and turn your back, stop talking, write what you need to say, and then turn around and say it. That way they can hear it and see it both at the same time. Those are our 12 tips for how to communicate with your newcomer. I hope that you find those helpful. Happy teaching.